He is a Hall of Famer. He has been a head coach, national championship head coach at Texas, most recently his second term at North Carolina. I love this guy. Mack Brown joins Craig Smoke, Paul Catalina, David Smoke on 365 Sports. It's great to see you, Coach. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So, Mac, is your overall thoughts on college football? Either you grab it and you embrace it, or you get left behind. You have seen all the changes. Is it almost to the point where it's just too much at one time?
There's been more changes in the last 3 years than my first 47. Which is really amazing. And you think about it, the coaches went through COVID and players went through COVID, fans went through COVID. So we'd never done that before. And that was about 4 years ago. And then you have transfer portal and you have NIL, a lot of great things in both of those areas. But when they collide, and then you've got tampering and kids transferring 4, 5, 6 times, we're losing a lot of what we built college football for: toughness, fight through things, stay there. Your team that came in as freshmen will finish together, and your best friends are in your wedding. And I think we're losing all that, David, and that really scares me moving forward. But kids are getting paid. They should have been getting paid a long time ago. I got $15 a month for laundry money, and we thought that was the greatest thing ever. But kids are getting paid, but unlike the NFL, we don't have a salary cap. So kids are getting paid too much in some cases. And then coaches are getting paid so much, and athletic directors are giving them buyouts that they can't get out of. So that's confusing to everybody. But we just have to admit we've gone to an NFL model, and our guidelines aren't as good as the NFL. So we've got to get a salary cap. We've got to get more accountability with everybody. You can't just be calling kids. It's so tough that the Penn State backup quarterback found out the starter was coming back, so he wanted to transfer. He had to do it during the college football playoffs. Here's a great kid that was being utilized during the game, and he's not going to get to play for a semifinal for the national championship. And that's tough. Put the kid in a very tough situation. I saw a young guy at Oregon that 5-star that had just committed there and gone to bowl practice. He's in the transfer portal. So I really wish we could have it where kids have to stay a year or 2 years at least, so they can't just run out of there the first time somebody gets mad. But if you didn't have the transfer portal, you wouldn't have Quinn Ewers at Texas. You wouldn't have Joe Burrow being the third-team quarterback at Ohio State, transferring to LSU and winning the Heisman Trophy. So there are a lot of great things for the backups that are working so hard, and they can't go ahead and play at another school where they can start. So I've got that. I understand it. But when you got agents involved, you've got tampering. You got them calling players on teams and saying, I'm going to offer you this much. And then you're in a negotiation. I talked to a head coach the other day about one of our coaches that he was interested in. He said, Coach, I'm trying to keep my team. So I'm negotiating with my players because everybody's trying to poach them. So until I can get my team stabilized and have retention of my roster, I can't possibly think about the next step. So college football playoffs are wonderful. These kids are fighting their guts out. The fans are loving it. These games have really been competitive. I can't wait for the next set of games. And kids are playing a lot more. Coaches are coaching a lot more in these games. If you think about the kids that are going to be in the final games here with semifinals and finals, they missed Christmas. They missed New Year's. They ended up competing during finals. They're going to be competing as they start the next phase here when school starts in January. And some of them will opt to declare for the NFL draft while they're playing in the games because they have to by the middle of January. So a lot of things that we've got to look at. I don't like the transfer portal being right in the middle of bowl games and playoffs. I don't know what we can do. Maybe you set it after spring practice, but when you do, that means that a guy that wants to leave might go through spring and then he wouldn't be there for spring for his new team. So that's one thing we've got to get fixed. We've got to handle the tampering. We've got to get a salary cap in my estimation. So there is some parity. Right now, the teams with the most money are going to win the most games because they're buying the best players. And that's just what's happening. And schools that are committed to that are going to have a chance to win. And David, the weirdest thing is just because you've got money doesn't mean you win. You still have to evaluate. You still have to get the right guys in your locker room, and you still got to develop them. But if you don't have money, you've got to be so lucky that you don't get people hurt, and your rival's probably not very good. And it's a crapshoot for those guys without money.
Mack, of everything I'm hearing, first I have one quick question. Did they give you that $15 in change so that you could use the machines, or did you have to do that on your own? That would seem like a kind of a pain of a step. And two, I would say that if you surveyed coaches, they're all for any kind of player empowerment that helps players out, whether that's money, more autonomy on their name, image, and likeness, and all that. I would think that most coaches were probably in favor of that a decade ago, but coaches are about structure. And for coaches to navigate in it, you need a structure, and that is the most frustrating thing, that it is just improv comedy right now, isn't it? It
really is. And when you talk about the $15 a month, that was for laundry money, quote. It was a check. and we all... No football player was going to do his own laundry anyway. Some of us, even if his mother came up for the weekend. But we took it for, you go to a movie, or you might get to take your date to a place to get a burger or something. But that was what the $15 was for. But we waited too long to change. And I understand that. And now with the revenue sharing, that's fair. Because the schools were making so much money, the coaches were making so much money. And coaches are making so much money now that it's really interesting to watch when a coach gets a buyout where you can't buy him out, and you did that because he had leverage. He was thinking about going to another school. Then the next year you want him fired. So we're in a crazy time with all this stuff. And it's interesting. We had a lot of talks about when we get the 75% for most football teams that are going to win in the fall for revenue sharing. How do you distribute that money? If you've got your left tackle and he's really good and he asks for $1.5 million, and if you've got this much money for your offensive line, you've either got to decide to keep your left tackle or go to the right guard and the right tackle, because you don't have enough money to keep all three. So coaches are really going to have to do a tremendous job of managing that, quote, salary cap as we move forward, because that's where we're headed. And then if you decide that that's your guy and you go with him and you give him $1 million of your $13 million, and then he gets hurt or he's not any good or he has a bad attitude, then you've screwed up. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure on coaches to make the right decisions, to distribute the money properly for their locker room, and who to bring into their program.
As your time was winding up at North Carolina, how different was your day-to-day activities compared to 5 or 10 years before, and what you were spending your time on and the amount of time you were spending on certain things as opposed to maybe what you otherwise would have been doing?
It's a great question. And for us, one of the problems is we didn't have NIL money. We had $4 million where the ones that were winning had 20. So we signed 26 kids 2 years ago and we didn't give them a penny. And then we started giving our freshmen about $35,000 a year. And one of the really frustrating things at the end, we had 4 recruits, and they would come in and say, "Coach, I'm committed, but I've got to go to this other school. They've offered me $600,000, and you're offering me $35,000 or none." We called it the family discount. We had a great culture and a great family and a great school, great academics, and then they'd say, "Coach, $600,000, man." And I would really sit there and say, "I got it." I think if I was you, I'd do the same thing. But I didn't deal with agents. We had a general manager and a collective that would do that. I told our kids, we don't have much money. We're going to be as fair as we can with what we've got. And really and truly, we say it's not about pay for play. It is 100%. If you play good, you're going to get paid. And who's got leverage? Right now, the kids out of high school that are coming in have more leverage than some that are on your team. And guys that are in the transfer portal, that's gone up maybe twice as much this year for those guys as it was last year. So that's why there has to be a cap that's just going to keep going. And I've talked to some athletics directors, and the ones that are being the most aggressive in NIL are the ones that are winning. And they've said, let's get as much money as we can. Let's buy the best players we can get, because at some point this rule is going to change. And there is going to be a cap. There's no cap now, so let's buy the best team we can get and give us a chance to win. And then we'll be so far ahead when the other teams start, when it gets to be more parity, when we have a salary cap, that we'll be ahead because we've already got the best players and we've already agreed to pay them this much, and they can't, they'll have to grandfather that in.
Mack, is it possible for the rich to get richer, as you've mentioned, because of the money, the revenue, et cetera, and donors, et cetera, NIL, and yet the otherwise teams outside of maybe the top 25 or 30 are better and more competitive because they can get some of those that are leaving those teams? Is that possible?
No.
Okay.
I think the ones, David, with the most money are going to win the most games.
Okay.
As long as they still do a great job of evaluating and developing. And what we forget sometimes is sometimes the best players aren't the best team, it's the best chemistry. It's the best dynamics. So more than ever before, you need a coach that gets it. You need a coach that players are going to believe in, because there's a third party, there's agents, there's parents, there's more people in that young guy's ear than ever before. So they're going to have to believe in you. And I think that's what's happening. But the ones with the money that are doing the best job of evaluating and coaching are going to be the ones that win the most games. If you look at who's playing now, Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, and Penn State have money. Georgia had money. The ones that lost don't have as much money. And that's where this crazy thing's going. We're really putting ourselves in a position, unlike the NFL, where their draft system makes them have more parity. We have nothing like that. And the one thing I'm worried about are outside of that top, let's say 15 that are paying, what's going to happen to the other schools? And then you start looking at, there are people on people's staff, guys that just sit there and evaluate group of 5 players and evaluate guys on other teams. And then the agent will call that guy and say, hey, somebody going to offer you $1.5 million if you'll leave. So that's where it's a problem. It's really, really hard for you to maintain your roster if you don't have money. And I don't blame the kids. We as the adults have put the kids and the coaches really in this precarious position. All of the coaches like the fact a kid can transfer. All of the coaches like the fact that the kids have more money. None of the coaches like the structure that we have with the portal, with the tampering, with the timing of the portal, and the fact that there are not limits on what you can pay.
Coach, I'm curious on your opinion as a guy who coached in the Big 12 for a long time and in the ACC for a long time. There was, and look, the SEC had a lot of national title winners, but there was a lot of push about how deep and great that league was. But really, you know, I think that it's especially proven out now with more, it's not the same kind of parity, like you said, as the NFL, but more parity, more talent spread around, that there's not really anybody that's so head and shoulders above everyone. As a coach who's had to coach against all of those teams, what do you think about the real division of league supremacy, or is that maybe something more that the commissioners and leaders of each league say because that's what they have to do, as opposed to what the reality is of it on the field, on the grass?
Yeah, I think it's more year to year, day to day. Some are top heavy and have really weak teams in the lower levels. But really and truly, the SEC has done such an amazing job of marketing. When they say it means more, and they got videos out, and they talk about it all the time, and they've had some great teams, and it is interesting now that Texas is the only SEC team that's left, and there's 2 Big Ten teams in the playoffs and Notre Dame. So one independent. But I do think it depends on the coach. The coach has to be a fit. The coach has to like his place. And it's right now it's going to be very, very interesting because of realignment that we've looked at. You see that Texas and Oklahoma's moving to the SEC, and it looks like now that was a great move for them, where there was a lot of people questioning that before. But with the new TV alignments, there's a possibility that Big Ten and the SEC will make 90+ million, and the other leagues will make 40 to 30 million. And that's the disparity there just means it affects your NIL. It affects who you can keep as your staff. It affects everything and puts athletic directors at the schools with less money in a really tough spot.
Coach, as I'm sure you've seen or heard, the first edition of this expanded playoff has been very polarizing, very controversial in some ways, entertaining as well. Just curious from your perspective and however much you've watched, do you have any strong thoughts on maybe some of the conversations, not just what we've seen, but also the first-round seeds, the fact that all the byes went 0-4, the home field and hosting, things like that that will be tweaked moving forward. Just your thoughts on what we've seen and what you would like to see maybe moving forward.
Yeah. Number one, I think it's long overdue, and the playoffs are great. It's tougher on the players because they have to play 13 to 15 games now, but they're getting paid. It's tougher on the coaches. Coaches are getting paid more than ever before, and especially the ones that are playing in these games. But like I said, you're affecting the end of one semester and the start of the next one. You're affecting holidays. But this is an experience that these kids will remember the rest of life. Remember when we won the national championship, I asked Coach Royal after the game, what does this mean? He says, this means you've done something very few people have ever done. And he said, now, as soon as you walk out of here, they're going to want you to do it again. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
And he's right. And we didn't do it again. We got cold hurt at Alabama and had our chance. So, but then you'd want to do a third one. So that's part of it. But I do think that conference champions should matter. But I don't think they should have automatic buys and be first seeds. I think that you should have your 12 teams, and some people think you should go to 16, but I don't think that matters that much. But I like 12. There'll be controversy over who 13 and 14 are. If we go to 16, there'll be controversy of who 17 and 18 are to get in. So that's not going to change. But I would not let conference champs have an automatic first bid and a bye because conferences are all different. I would definitely rank the teams on who is the best team 1 to 12. And I would also take into account strength of scheduling, because if not, then why not play an easy out of conference schedule? And we love the Texas playing Michigan. Mm-hmm. I mean, we love that. So that's really cool. So let's don't reward people with weak schedules and take away those games. I think that will hurt who we are and what we're looking for. Secondly, I think you really got to look at it's kind of like a bowl game. If you're off for 2 weeks or 20 days or something, does that hurt you in preparation? Does Oregon, you start looking at the teams that lost. Georgia. So it is a little frightening for those that kept playing, and those that kept playing, the coaches have to do a tremendous job of handling their practices where they don't hit too much, they don't get people hurt, but there's something about playing and being successful with it. The other thing I would do, and a lot of people disagree with me, and I've felt this way for probably 20, 30 years, I would take the group of 5 and let them play their own national championship. Boise State was the best team in the group of 5. So let them go win a national championship. I would have a Heisman Trophy for them. I would have a Butkus Award for them. But let them play in their own league because they're at a disadvantage because they're group of 5. They don't have as much money. It's hard to recruit as well. And normally, if the team that's ready to play is going to play a group of 5 team, The skill guys may be similar, but it's really hard to get too deep, really good linemen at a group of 5 school, especially when people are tampering and poaching their best players every year. So I would rather Boise State have a chance to win the national championship instead of be proud to get in the playoffs, but probably not have a great chance to win when you're playing against a Penn State who has a chance to win the national championship. And then that would give another group of 4 team a chance to get in the playoff. But I've always felt that way. I would watch Memphis and Boise in a national championship game. I think it'd be fun and it would be competitive. And then those young people on those teams can think about, we have a 12-team playoff. So that means that the teams that were really good that didn't quite get where they wanted to still would have a chance to win a national championship. And what we're doing this for, we do it for kids. What's best for the kids? Well, it's best for those group of 5 kids to have a 12-team playoff where they all have a chance to win a national championship instead of their season's over, in my opinion. And then it gives another group of 4 team a chance to be in the playoffs to win a national championship. And I want to keep the bowl games. There have been some great bowl games, and they're fun. There's been some that are bad. At North Carolina, we were playing our 4th-team quarterback. I mean, that's tough. And then you have 3, 4 starters, 5 starters opt out on defense. And the same thing with some Duke last night played their at least 3rd quarterback. So he'd thrown 1 pass and played 5 plays in a game or something, had 5 runs against Dart, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So we're going to have some of those things in bowl games coming up. But I still love the fact that we have the bowl games and the ones that can't get in the playoffs. And because of money, there's going to be a lot more that can't get in the playoffs than can. So if you're at a program and you don't have a lot of money and you're not going to play for a national championship, then give yourself a chance to go to a bowl and have a good experience.
Mack, if you don't mind, when you were at Tulane, if you would have had a team that was 11-0 or 10-1 that ran the table and had a chance to maybe be a part of something bigger, would you have been okay with having your separate national title as a group of 5?
Absolutely.
Okay, I was curious.
It gave us a legitimate chance to win a national championship because we were competing against likes.
Yep.
And that would be our goal every year, to win the national championship. And Tulane's done a great job. It'd be hard. They're looking to try to get to the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And Texas and Ohio State and Penn State and Notre Dame, Georgia, they're looking to win the national championship.
Mack,
and I think that's where it's different. So, and the other thing, our game is about the kids and the fans. If we didn't have the fans, then we wouldn't have a game. So in my estimation, we constantly have to think about what is best for the kids. What gives them the best chance to keep this great game going? What motivates them? What lessons can we keep teaching them? I'm a little worried right now that some of them with leverage are getting money before they've earned it. And that's not the way we were all raised, but I got it. And I understand. That's why I want to make sure that we all have a chance to pay the ones that are playing the best instead of just the ones that have the best leverage. But also we want to keep the fans involved. And if it's a group of fans with a team that's not going to go to the playoffs and not going to get to the national championship, then let them have that goal of winning 8 games and go into a fun bowl and enjoying that bowl experience.
We've had G.J. Kenny, Jeff Traylor, guys you know incredibly well, who have talked about tampering and their rosters are getting rated. We've heard what Jim Mora Jr. has said this week. Is it verboten to turn somebody in who's tampering? Is that like maybe telling on somebody else in the mafia? And I'm not using mafia in that, you know what I mean. Is that something that would be blackballed if a coach did that? Will that ever happen?
The problem with turning someone in for tampering, because we had it happen, is that you can't prove it anymore because there's agents, there's third parties. Mm-hmm. And what is tampering? Did they call a high school coach? Did they call the parents? Did they have an agent do it? So you're not going to catch anybody. So you know who it is. We had an offensive tackle bought off our campus. He told us they called. He told us how much money he's going to make. He told us about the contract. We checked it out. It was all true. We called the people and threatened them, and they took him. He started. So it doesn't matter. And then fans say, well, everybody tampers. And fans would say, hey, he's just griping because he's losing. So really, a coach can't win that. I love Jim, and he is absolutely right. The day after he said it, he had a player leave.
I saw that. Yeah.
So he knew it. He knew it was coming. But again, what's the NCAA going to do? You've got to have a coach. They do it through the players on the team. Player might be a buddy. You've got to have a coach that's got text messages or phone calls that are recorded to that kid before you're going to get somebody in trouble for tampering. And any coach that's going to do that's dumb enough, he should be fired anyway.
That's what I was just about to say.
Don't be leaving a trail.
Yeah. Mack, I was about to ask you about Riley Leonard. I know you studied him, but last night he's such a gutsy player. You did not get to face him a year ago, I'm guessing, because he'd gotten hurt in that FSU game, and then after that was there. But you've studied him. You've played like Duke and North Carolina. Obviously, we don't have to tell people how much you guys don't like each other. But what did you think about Riley Leonard and that game last night and the kind of wrecking ball energy that he brings to the quarterback position?
Yeah. I'm a huge Riley Leonard fan. He took a quarterback draw against us when we were at North Carolina and went 75 yards, and we didn't have anybody fast enough to catch him. And that got my attention. I mean, I'm standing there watching him, and I'm screaming, and our guys looked like they were in running in mud, and that kid was just flying by us. But more than that, he's a kid of faith. He's tough as nails. He played at Duke after he had the high ankle sprain, and I mean played on one leg some. So is he the perfect passer? Probably not, but they run it so well, and he's so tough, and he's such a great leader that he puts people in positions where they have to stop the run, and then it gives him opportunities to throw the ball. But I think more than anything else, you look at what Quinn Ewers did at the end of the game, winning the game with a 4th and 13. I mean, that's toughness. That's guts. That's having a tremendous amount of pride instead of pressure. And those are moments that he'll remember and we'll all remember for the rest of his life. Same thing with Riley Leonard. And he went to Notre Dame to win a national championship. And I'm sitting there watching him last night. And it's obviously been a good decision for him. And he has a chance to do that now. And when I looked at him, David Cutcliffe recruited him out of South Alabama. He was a basketball player. He was on a running football team. He didn't throw a lot, so he didn't have many offers. And David found him. And then as coaches do, David redshirted him as a freshman, then got fired. So he should have been playing him because he thought he had him for the future. But I think he is a great player, a better person. And just watching him, us studying him and playing against him, he is one tough sucker now. He is going to do whatever he can do to beat you. And you can't hit him hard enough to make him turn it down.
Yeah, he launched like John Elway for that first down in the win. Mack, how much does, when you saw that Texas and Ohio State would play in the semifinals, does that flash back to the amazing win that launched you to the national title and the win against Ohio State in Columbus in 2005?
It really does, David. It's so fun when they played SC. I was thinking about our game with SC, and when they played Alabama, got Colt getting hurt on the 5th play and Garrett Gilbert coming in. We still had a chance to win, but lost late. When I think about Ohio State, going to Columbus was so much fun. They hadn't lost a night game to an out-of-conference opponent. I don't think they'd lost in Columbus in forever. 106,000 or something, maybe the loudest crowd I've ever seen. I remember we were working out on Friday, and the band was down there taunting us and cussing at us, and I went down and talked to the band. They ended up being my buddies. So that was fun. Jim Tressel and I stand in the middle of the field, and we're talking about how similar the jobs are. And they really are. They're the same job. I said, yours is colder. But you've still got the same positives, the same energy, and the same issues. And then we won that game with an unbelievable throw from Vince Young to Lima Sweet at the end of the game. Defense played great. And I thought, David, the winner of that game would play SC for the national championship at that time. I think we both thought that. And I believe to this day, if they had beaten us, they would have played for the national championship instead of us, because it was two great teams. And then we come back the next year, and they thump us pretty good in Austin. And it was Colt's second game, I think. And then the unbelievable game we had with them with Terrell Pryor in the Fiesta Bowl, that 16 seconds left, and Colt hits Quan Cosby for the touchdown. So 2 of our 3 games that we won were unbelievable games. The other one, they kind of took over. So I'm going to go to the game on Friday. I can't wait to see the game. I think we've gotten it right here. We've got 2 of the best teams playing in Dallas, and it's going to be really fun to watch Penn State, Notre Dame. They're so physical, both of them, that it's worked out for the committee, and it's the first time the committee's ever picked for this, so it's new for them too. But we're Georgia playing last night with a backup quarterback shows you Notre Dame did a good job of stopping the run, and you have to make a young quarterback beat you, and it was hard. It was just hard for Georgia to move the ball, and then they make the mistakes in the kicking game in a couple of different areas, because Georgia is such a great team. You think about it, they've beaten Texas twice, so it's going to be really fun to watch these next 2 games and see who ends up in the national championship, because it's usually the team that can run the ball the best and stop the run and has the best kicking game. Because this time of the year, the biggest difference in Group of 5 and Power 4 are linemen. Everybody can get skill. Everybody's got some guys that can run. Everybody can find a quarterback now. But the difference is the 2 lines of scrimmage. And that's going to be fun to watch in these next 2 games.
Kerry, you mentioned Quan Cosby. He's a good friend of ours. I did a radio show with him for a while. Mac, did you ever recruit anybody from a smaller town than Mart, or is Mart in that? Because Mart is very, very small.
Yeah, well, Quan's like an adopted son of ours. We absolutely love him. He is amazing. And it was funny. We recruited him, we signed him. He goes to play pro baseball. And then 3 years later, we recruit him and sign him again. And I remember, because his name's a little bit different, Cosby than Crosby, and Oklahoma kept telling him, he doesn't even know your name. I'm sitting there in my office, and Quan says, do you know my name? And I said, that's really an unusual request. I've been recruiting you for 5 years, it seems like. So, yeah, I know your name. And I gave it to him. He said, well, that's good. The coaches at Oklahoma told me you didn't even know my name. And I said, well, they know they're in trouble, and they're trying to figure out a way to keep you from coming to Texas, and that's the only way they can do is lie about it. So, but he's such a wonderful representative of Texas football. He's an incredible person, and I just love him, and we're moving back to Austin, and I can't wait to be able to catch up with him. He actually came to one of our games at North Carolina and brought some friends, so that's
awesome. Mac, I know we've had you for a long time. A couple of more questions, if you don't mind. Your career was good at Tulane, but it was great at Texas. And then obviously you'd mentioned the game against Alabama that didn't start well and in the end didn't end well. And then eventually time to move on, right? Change happens. It's part of the business, no matter what you did. Had you won that 2009 game, would you have left Texas on your own terms? And at the same time, do you have any regrets at all about your time in Austin?
David, I said this at the press conference when I was leaving. The 2 regrets are I really hate that Texas A&M lost 12 kids in a bonfire. As a parent and a grandparent, every Thanksgiving I think about those parents and the relatives, because that I don't know sometimes why things happen in our world, and that shouldn't happen. And the other thing that I was incredibly tough for all of us is losing Cole Pittman in 2001 to a truck accident. So when you go back and look at things, those are things that change people's lives forever. and they're doing a movie about Cole Pittman now, and I can't wait to see it. But we lost a young player to cancer this year, and we watched him after 2.5 years just slowly die. So we all need to understand, when you've got your health and your family's health, you've got no problems. You've got none, because you wake up and your son's got cancer. All the other problems are unimportant. So I've learned those things over time, and that's really important to know. Would I have liked to beat Texas Tech when we were number one out in Lubbock? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And should we have played better? Yeah. Should we have coached better? Yeah, I got that. Should we have beaten Alabama? Sports is really weird. If Cole had stayed healthy, I think we win that night, because Alabama could stop the run. They couldn't stop the pass. And we had Quan and Jordan Shipley, and we could throw the ball now with Colt. He was very accurate, and he could run. And we nearly won with a freshman quarterback that I wish I had played more. But no, and 16 years is a long time, David. Spike Dike was a great friend of all of us, and Spike left Texas Tech after 13 years. And I said, Spike, why'd you leave? And he said, well, Coach, they tell me that you lose 10% of your support every year. Mm-hmm. I stayed 13 years. He said, hell, do the math. And I thought, I got it. That makes sense to me. And then I'd been at Texas 16 years. Sally said that's 4 presidential terms.
Yeah.
So based on Spike's analogy, that was right. And you get worn out. Texas is a fun job. It's one of the best jobs in the country. And after you coach there, it's hard to coach anywhere else, because you have everything. And there's really no reason not to win all the games. And you're not going to, but you have a chance to do that. And DeLoss Dodds was an incredible athletics director. He helped so much. How do you stay there for 32 years? And now Chris Del Conte has done an amazing job with basketball, with all the other sports, and with football. It's amazing what he's done. And I'm just so impressed with him. And Sark's the perfect fit right now. He's got the balance between Nick Saban and Pete Carroll with mentors. They've been NFL guys. He's got the balance of coaching a year with the Falcons. He's been a head coach at 2 pressure places in Washington and USC. So I think he's the perfect fit at this time. And really and truly, David, I did kind of leave on my own because we were tired.
Right.
It was all down at the end, and I think it was best for everybody to leave. Then I went to TV for 5 years, and I missed the kids. I missed the game. I love the game of football. I love it. It's been a huge part of my life, and I love the kids that play it. I love the coaches, the high school coaches, the college coaches. I love what they do and what they stand for, and it's been such a huge part of my life. That's why I had to go back and do it one more time. And I'm ready now to be involved with football. I may go back and do some TV. I want to be involved with programs and coaches. But I don't need to be out there fighting at 73 years old in a program that didn't have as much money. They needed a new face there. And I fully agreed in both cases with it was time.
Would you take a job if they asked you to be the college football czar?
I don't think so. I wouldn't, David, unless I knew that I could make changes and I knew who was going to be working with me to make changes.
Right.
It's not going to be, we're not going to have a czar that matters unless the system changes. And we've got to have a system that can have change and it can have immediate change. And the NCAA has always been really slow in their process. And they've got so many different people. You'd have to cut it down with really smart people, and you'd have to make decisions and make them quickly. It's harder, again, with Congress because the laws are different. And you'd have to make sure that everybody was on board. And I just feel like we're going to have somebody to get the commissioners together that can work with the NCAA. When and you all live in Waco, Grant Taft's a dear friend of mine. When Grant was the president of the AFCA, and I was on the board, he was the head, the CEO, and then I became the president. He got things done. The American Football Coaches Association changed so many rules, got the 10 coaches approved, and got so many things fixed when Chuck Ninus did the College Football Association. And he brought in the presidents, the faculty reps, the athletics directors, and the coaches, and we'd all meet together, and we would discuss things and make changes. And right now, we're all over the place. Who's running it? Who's making decisions? Why did we have all these things that we decided were good without understanding the consequences? You don't ever make a decision without understanding the consequences. And how do you fix those consequences over time? And that's why we're in a mess right now, and coaches are getting worn out because we say it's the Wild Wild West. There are no rules. When I talk to some coaches and say tampering, said, Coach, it'd take an idiot to get caught for tampering. For what I said earlier, well, how about money? You can give a kid any amount of money you want. There are limits on the NFL guys when they go speak. I could send Drake May to Charlotte to a car dealership, and they could give him a car and $1 million for taking pictures and standing outside. So that's just kind of where we are with this, and that's why we've got to get it fixed.
Hey, you know I love you, man. I appreciate your time. Always appreciate it. Only thing I didn't like is you always went into, whenever you played Nebraska, you had to just do what you did, and some great memories with Ricky in '98 and all all the things you did. Seriously, always appreciated you communicating with me. I know Sally's in the background. She's getting ready to cook dinner. She needs you to get off the show, and I know she's been amazing too.
No, Sally is wonderful. She is the best head coach's wife there's ever been because she cared about the kids. And when we first got married, she said, I don't care about the games. I don't care if you win or lose. Well, she found out that her husband was miserable if we lost. And she also found out that the kids were miserable. So she said, I get it. We need to be winning these games.
Hey, enjoy the game, Ohio State, Texas, and also retirement. And I know you won't just sit around because that's not who you are. We really, really appreciate your time today, Coach. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I can't stand retirement, but I will rewire.
Yes, there you go.
Do something else.
There you go. That's a great word, rewire. Thank you. Mack Brown, Hall of Fame coach with us today on many issues with college football, from his own personal experience to what he thinks is best. Whether anyone will ever get to that point remains to be seen. Appreciate his time.